Yeah, there was a lot going on this week, and I got to tell you, folks, Wednesday afternoon I left Teterboro, right on the New Jersey-New York border, and we joked about the safety and the number of planes coming out of there, and then to land and saw what would happen. The tragedy in Washington, D.C. is really heartbreaking. We pray for all of those souls that were lost, and it does affect a lot of people. There's no doubt about it. So we pray for those folks. The other thing that happened earlier this week, which was tremendously newsworthy, was what happened in the AI business, Brian.
That's right. Yeah. So a lot of people had never heard of this AI startup in China called DeepSeek. So they came out and their app rose to the top of the charts of the Apple downloads. And that's, I think, what got a lot of people's attention, because this company has been around for about a year, and some of their technology, a lot of people knew about it already for a few months, but the markets didn't seem to take notice until over the weekend, when they claimed that they have a much more efficient way to run some of these large language models or these artificial intelligence things without having to rely so much on really expensive chips from NVIDIA or a lot of electricity. Now, there is some skepticism over some of their claims. Did they kind of cheat a little bit as far as downloading too much data from OpenAI? Did they actually invest a lot more money than what they're claiming, especially with the setup of it? So there's still some skepticism, but it really, I think, got people a little polarized on this. You look at how chip stocks and electricity related stocks did, those fell. But you had others, those who more would be users of the technology, those stocks actually rose on the news.
And so we look at the reason why that happened, Brian, is because they are spending the money on these chips, right? So their CapEx exposure will be dramatically different.
Yeah.
And so we saw reports this week from Microsoft and Meta, and both of them said they're going all in on this. And of course, we saw something from the government as well, backing a major investment. So there was a statement early on Monday afternoon that is this the Sputnik moment, and we'll remember, all of us of a certain age, that started off the space race between Russia and the U.S., and it was an enormous amount of money that was spent in that space. So I guess it could be a good thing if this is real.
Yeah.
There could be more spending for the recipients of those companies, but we'll have to see how this really plays out. I still think it's a little too early. I am skeptical.
Sure. Yeah, and I agree. I'm skeptical of some of the claims. And the idea was that they were using these chips that were not as good as the ones we have here in the United States because of exports or embargoes against exporting these high-end ones to China. But now the question is, did they actually get a bunch of them maybe from Singapore? So kind of, Singapore buys them, sells them to them. Are some of the claims true? But whatever it is, it did get people interested in the idea that the U.S. doesn't have this almost impregnable moat around it when it comes to artificial intelligence. There is competition out there, and that competition, that can be a good thing. That can lead to further innovations, more efficiency, and the way that we've been talking about it on the team is thinking about this is all part of that broader narrative, that broader story. It's just a new chapter in the story, one where maybe now it's more about what software developers, the different use cases, who can actually put this technology to good use.
Not only just users of that, but think about all of the picks and shovels, companies that go with it. Everything from power grid companies, right, to technology companies, to financial companies that will use some of this AI. So it does have an impact. This is a big time in our history to see how this actually plays out. But I will say, you had a good one on Monday morning when you said, is this DeepSeek or a deep fake?
That's right.
So let's continue to move on, because the other really big news that this week was the Federal Reserve doing a big bye-bye.
That's right. They basically said that with their policy statement, they were on pause, so they didn't actually do anything, and that's a change in policy. They had been cutting rates towards the end of 2024, so 100 basis points or a full percentage point. They took January to pause. In their policy statement, they had eliminated a reference to making progress on inflation towards their target. That got a lot of people's attention in the policy statement, where it basically said that unemployment rate, it's low. Inflation is elevated. No reference to whether or not they foresee continued progress. Chair Powell, half an hour later during his press conference, tried to say, well, I was just wordsmithing this a little bit. We are still making progress. But I think it was a little too late. The market is still now skeptical about how divided is that committee about what the path forward is. After that announcement came out, we had the Federal Reserve Governor Bowman. She said that she thinks rates are no longer restrictive. She thinks that she really wants to wait for quite a while before cutting. But then Chicago Fed President Goolsbee, who is also a voting member, he said, no, I disagree. I actually think we are going to have materially lower rates a year from now than where we are today. So it is a very divided committee.
And so his position is that they want to still get to their target of 2%. And so they were headed down. They took a little bit of a breath, and they're looking around. And why they're looking around is because of the threat of tariffs. And we'll get into that. And so they're going to wait and see to see how things actually play out. But this path downwards may continue to happen, which is something that we put in all of our investment theses.